Well, first of all, just want to say how great it is to be back at the Scaling Up conference. Thanks, Jeff, for the opportunity to join. Maybe it's a blessing in disguise. I had prepared a short deck. I'm usually not a huge fan of using them in these settings. I don't know if those slides are available, but if not, it's fine. I'll just talk.
Did the slides to the back of the room?
No, I assume that had been done in advance, but don't worry about it. It's fine. Anyway, I did just want to talk about, bioeconomy opportunities from an agricultural point of view, where they fit into to a broader sustainability strategy. Obviously, from an agricultural point of view, huge excitement, huge opportunities in the bioeconomy from a number of different perspectives. One of them just being, we look at the very significant investments in canola crush capacity that are happening in Saskatchewan right now, largely as a result of the clean fuels regulations and the anticipated increased demand for canola oil as feedstock for biofuel. Here's an example of where we're taking a product that traditionally would be shipped in bulk overseas and sold, and creating a more stable, more predictable domestic market. We're adding more value to the product here in Canada. We're creating opportunities for circularity where canola grown in Western Canada can be used to make renewable diesel and biofuels that in turn can be used to power agricultural operations in Western Canada. So really exciting opportunities using traditional agricultural products. Arguably even more exciting are opportunities to take, whether it's food waste, whether it's corn husks, straw, other byproducts, waste products, taking them and turning them into revenue streams by creating bioproducts, biofuels, other high value products. And certainly in terms of growth potential, like I said, I mean, it isn't, we've been talking about the bioeconomy for a long time as though it's something in the future. Biocomposites, as I understand it, in 2021, $25 billion global market, forecast to grow at 16% a year over the next decade. The opportunities are here and now, and they're growing quickly. As those of you who approach the world from an agricultural standpoint will be aware, we are in the midst at the department of putting together a sustainable agricultural strategy. We have a working group towards that end. We've held a consultative process from which we will be publishing a sort of a what we heard report, as we call them in government, fairly shortly. Just, I guess, a couple of takeaways from that are significant. One of them is with the environmental and climate programming that we have put in place and continue to put in place, both on our own and through our sort of framework agreements, the Sustainable Canadian Agricultural Policy, or SCAP as it's known, sort of our cost-shared agreement with provinces, is to try and align, farms first and foremost are businesses. 99% of them in Canada will be family-owned businesses. And we need to do what we can to align economic incentives with environmental imperatives. We don't want to put farmers in a position where they have to choose between what's environmental and what's economic. And we hope that a number of the programs we've put in place, the Agricultural Clean Technologies Program among them, will help to do that and take us a significant ways towards attaining our climate and environmental goals. The other situation, I suspect Monique will talk about this too from a forestry standpoint, is while we think we can make a lot of environmental progress by getting sort of the middle of the pack producers up towards closer to like positions of where the leaders are now. It's important that innovation continue, and we need programming that recognizes the special situation of early adopters. Farming is expensive business. It's not unusual for a single piece of equipment to cost $1 million, or for even a medium-sized grain farm to have several $1 million worth of equipment in the operation. Changing practices can be expensive and risky business. And when you're doing, particularly if you're doing something that hasn't been commercially proven, that hasn't been widely utilized before. You're taking particular risks, but it's important that we find ways to encourage people to continue to do that. Another way that we have, as a department, our history as doing agricultural research goes back to our very earliest days as an organization into the 19th century. That both our own internal research capacity and the funding that we utilize to support agricultural-related research through programs like Agri-Science are becoming increasingly oriented towards helping reach environmental goals. We have, as some of you will be aware, what we call our clusters program as part of Agri-Science, where we provide support for pre-commercial research and innovation and different parts of the agricultural and agri-food value chain. We do have a cluster focused on the bioeconomy, and as the Agri-Science program is linked to our agricultural framework agreements. We just began a new 5-year agreement on the 1st of April of this year. We're still in the midst of setting up clusters and are in the midst of evaluating a second proposal for a bioeconomy themed cluster. We do, through some of our programs, provide support for research and innovation for firms that are developing and deploying technologies in the bioeconomy. Firms like Six Ring Incorporated out of Calgary, we've provided support to help them advance their proprietary technologies, turn biomass into energy and biomaterials. Greenfield Global is another firm whose innovations in the bioeconomy we have recently supported. Maybe I'll just leave it there in the interest of time. Like I said, we're very excited, have worked in close collaboration with partners in Environment and Climate Change Canada and agricultural stakeholders, as well as forestry stakeholders, on the clean fuel regulations. And in an agricultural context, we've seen really significant investment flow into, in particular, canola crush capacity as a result of that. Look forward to continuing the partnership, developing new technologies, realizing some of those, making sure that some of those really exciting opportunities to take agricultural feedstocks and turn them into high-value products that can create new economic opportunities for Canada, while also helping to achieve climate and environmental goals, that we do what we can to fully realize that potential. Maybe one other point before I cede the floor, Jeff, if you'll allow me, and that is just maybe to touch on a moment on food loss and waste. And this is an area where data is notoriously lousy, but most estimates suggest that globally, somewhere between 30 and 50% of food produced around the world is lost or wasted. And I've always thought, if you came down from outer space and had no idea how humans organize themselves, and you realize that we have this big agri-food economy that has a big environmental footprint. We have hundreds of millions of people around the world who are undernourished, and somewhere between 30 and 50% of the output of that huge entity simply gets wasted. How crazy is that? And in wasting it, you create methane emissions and contribute to climate impacts. We do at the department have something called the Food Loss and Waste Reduction Challenge, where we're trying to support innovators in this space. We have seen some of the big agri-food companies, in fact, most of the big global companies, including some of the Canadian-based ones like McCain's and Maple Leaf, have set their own ambitious environmental targets and are investing in technologies like anaerobic digestion to capture methane and reduce food loss and waste. I should mention as well that as we talk about our sustainable agriculture strategy and working towards net zero, that it isn't just Ottawa and Agriculture Canada that are urging the agri-food value chain to do this. As I mentioned before, you've got some of the biggest buyers of agricultural products are themselves setting ambitious targets and looking hard at the emissions, the Scope 3 emissions associated with their purchases. You've also got the agricultural community itself setting environmental targets, and you've seen many agricultural commodity groups, the dairy farmers, the egg farmers, the Grain Council, among others, setting net zero targets for 2050. So we welcome the partnership and see opportunities of the bioeconomy as having a lot of really exciting potential to help simultaneously meet environmental and social economic objectives. And apologies, Jeff, if I've already talked too long, but I'll leave it at that.
Well, that's great. Thank you very much, Tom. Good perspective from the Department of Agriculture and Agri-Food. Let's move on now to Monique Frison, who's Director General at the Canadian Forest Service of Natural Resources Canada. So, Monique, you have the mic.
I think I have the mic. I do? Okay. Thanks, Tom. And thanks, Jeff, very much for the invitation to talk to everybody today. I just wanted to touch on a couple of things on the forest bioeconomy. I think my colleague Glenn Hargrove was here last year and would have talked about the renewed bioeconomy framework that the Canadian Council of Forest Ministers had just approved. We still continue to work through that framework and take it as a guide for us in the kinds of things that governments could do to accelerate development of the bioeconomy. We have a project, for example, with British Columbia and FP Innovations on biomass availability mapping. We're continuing to do work on codes and standards. Matt Shacker, who works for the Canadian Forest Service and is over there in the corner, leads all of that work for us in case anybody has any questions for him. And we continue to use that framework to talk to provinces and territories about some of the exciting things that they are doing. BC, I think, has already spoken at the conference, I heard. Ontario as well in the last year has talked a lot about biomass and using low-value stocks. So we're seeing a lot of activity with the provinces and territories as well. Federally, in the last budget, the government renewed a series of forest sector programs for $368 million for the next 3 years. That set of programs included our Forest Innovation Program, the Investments in Forest Industry Transformation Program, and the Green Construction Through Wood Program, all of which are popularly known as FIP, IFIT, and GC Wood for any of you who have applied before. Those three programs work in concert with each other from basic research all the way through to commercialization. They are run out of the same shop and access a very solid set of experts within the government and from many of your organizations as well. We have seen those set of programs contribute to the development of products like nanocellulose crystals. We have seen work in construction and building products like putting lignin in asphalt and lignin in home insulation. We are continuing to see innovation through that stream in work like, for example, biochar. We're seeing a very high degree of interest now in all of the advanced solid biofuels like torrefied pellets, biochar, and biocoal as well, both as a source of energy and also as an input to other manufacturers looking to decarbonize, particularly smelters. As Tom said, one of the changes that we made in this last round for the IFIT program is we moved from focusing on first-in-kind to early adopters, which is a little bit broader than first-in-kind. I think hoping that we want to see more companies in Canada be able to adopt innovative approaches and look at innovative products. We're also expanding the GC Wood program a little bit to, yes, to continue to focus on mass timber, but also to look at interesting ways of using building materials and approaches like design for disassembly. Design for disassembly, especially important if you want to think about a bioeconomy and circular economy where you can use construction materials after they're taken out and disassembled for something else. We continue to do a good bit of research in-house. We are working with 23 other countries through the Mission Innovation Structure to do some focused work on biorefining, as well as with the CanMet labs that NRCan has internally. Thanks once again for the invitation, and thank you too for all of the assistance and advice that we get from our industry and organization stakeholders. I think one of the challenges that we have is continuing to try to be relevant and helpful in advancing the bioeconomy, and certainly advice from all of you helps us do that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Monique. And if we're going to have strategies, frameworks, if industry is going to get on with doing things in the industrial bioeconomy, then a lot of that potential could be unlocked through the development of standards. And the Canadian Standards Association CSA group is here to tell us a little bit about the work that you're doing in that space. So, Lynn, over to you.
Can you hear me? Great. Thanks, Jeff. And hello, everyone. This talk's going to switch gears a little bit, but hopefully you'll see and appreciate sort of at the end of it how standards can underpin and address a lot of the challenges that we've been speaking with over the last couple of days and that Tom and Monique had just spoke to. So my name's Lynn Barber. I'm Manager of Strategic Initiatives at the Canadian Standards Association. And my role is really to coordinate and help drive our cross-sector bioeconomy projects, initiatives that we have. So, but maybe before I go further, I'll tell you a little bit about the Canadian Standards Association, if you're not sure. I mean, you might recognize the logo. Hockey helmets, plumbing, that sort of thing are usually pretty common. But the standards development side, which is where I come from, is a not-for-profit, non-government, member-based standards development organization, or SDO, as we call it. And we're accredited through the Standards Council of Canada to develop national standards, and the equivalent through ANSI in the US. We've been doing it for a long time now. We turned 100 years old in 2019. So we're a big SDO, but we really focus on social good. I think really what I'd like to emphasize in terms of learning about CSA is the heart of our organization are our expert members. So we have over 11,000 subject matter experts that develop the content for these standards. So that's like folks like you develop the content. CSA really sort of shepherds the experts through the process so that at the end of the day we can stamp that national standard of Canada and just make sure that all the requirements, et cetera, that were put in place to get that designation. So I think it's fair to say that we operate in pretty much every aspect of your life. You turn on your light switch, you go to your sink, you put on your hockey helmet, that sort of thing. So very impactful, but also areas like that are specifically related to what we're talking about in bioeconomy, natural resources, environment, climate change, et cetera. So where's the clicker? Just wanted to, can you advance just to the next slide, please? Because it sort of sets, yeah, no, that's good, got that. So we just like to use this visual. It's very simplistic, an infographic, but what it does is sort of give you the vision. CSA sees bioeconomy as really big picture, right? We talked about the different areas where we operate. So we work with the Canadian Forest Service, particularly on the biomass. I don't know if Jordan Solomon's still here, but he talked about the biomass supply chain risk standards. Really critical to start getting all of this underway. And we sort of go all the way through the value chain, hopefully to the end of life, although I think it's first life, circular economy, and standards are helping to support actually a link in one of the chains, a link in the chain to be able to go all the way through. So, you know, it's a little bit about what we do at CSA, but, you know, where is the value of standards? What does it do for us? I think Monique had just mentioned the renewed CCFM framework, as well as the bioindustrial bioeconomy strategy that was put out a number of years ago. And in those initiatives, they identify specifically lack of standards is hindering the bioeconomy. And I think today we heard, I think in a couple of conversations about not speaking the same language. Well, that goes even as granular as not having the same understanding for terms and definitions. So, you know, that's an example. Or voluntary product standards, or, you know, being able to validate or certify the environmental claims of a product. You know, all of these things are, you know, really big challenges, and I think national standards would be able to help that. And even over the last couple of days, we heard about the importance of consistency and clarity of expectations, and all of these things we're talking about. Those are the kinds of things that national standards are really good at getting at. Harmonization, improving transparency about the process, consistency, clarity of expectations. So even, I mean, the, you know, standards, we're talking about national standards, and there are definitely some regional aspects, key regional aspects, but there are definitely commonalities that national standards can pull all of this together. So I'm just one more slide, I'm gonna wrap up. Okay. So all of this and everything that CSA wants to do with our standards, what we're doing now and what we see looking forward, are all around 4 sort of key objectives. So decarbonization, transformation of waste, basically into value-added products, innovation, and sustainability. So what, I guess maybe I'll finish off with maybe a call to all of you, and that would be, you know, should come to us, share your experience, come under the tent, give us your feedback, because, you know, that's really how we're going to be able to develop the most impactful standards that are really going to be able to help unlock the bioeconomy. So that's it for me. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much, Lynn. And please have your questions ready. I've got a couple myself. For Tom and Monique, the session that we had just before this one was called Bold Goals for U.S. Biomanufacturing, Will Canada Be Left Behind? And one of the things we heard about was the all-of-government approach that is being taken by the Biden administration. And in September of last year, so just 12 or 14 months ago, the White House came out with an executive order on U.S. biomanufacturing and gave federal departments 6 months to come back with a report on how they were going to deliver on the White House's objectives. And indeed, 6 months later, a group of about 7 different federal departments produced something called Bold Goals for U.S. biomanufacturing. So I'm just wondering and hoping, and by the way, our opening panel that we had yesterday morning was chaired by Charles Vincent, who you probably know is the senior ADM at ISED. So is there an opportunity? I've been encouraged by what I've heard. Monique, you've talked about the forest bioeconomy framework, and I know you're on your 2nd iteration of that, and it's moving forward. And Tom, you gave us quite an overview of what's going on in agriculture and your desire there. And I know, Tom, you and I have talked for a long time about the opportunities. Is there an opportunity for a bioeconomy strategy that is an all-of-government approach and that we can move forward a little bit faster? We've only got a few years until 2030.
Yeah, no, I would hope so, Jeff. I mean, government is always, I would, you know, that, and one would hope that, you know, developments in the U.S. might help to focus us and find the energy to kind of work collaboratively on things. I know in an agricultural context, I'm sure during the conference you've probably heard lots about the U.S. Anti-Inflation Act. I know in the agricultural world there was substantial funding provided to the U.S. Department of Agriculture that they have used in part to advance their own climate agenda. They have been very deliberate that their action in this space will be voluntary and incentive-based. And I mean, when you think about emissions in the agricultural world, they are mostly from biological sources. They're not always easy to measure, and they don't lend themselves to carbon pricing very readily. And certainly we're well aware that in terms of opportunities in the bioeconomy that the Anti-Inflation Act and some of the measures that are being put in place in the U.S. can create a competitive imbalance and put in jeopardy, put at risk potential investments in this space in north of the border. And yeah. Like I said, I think as I talked about our work on the clean fuels regulations with federal colleagues, I think there are positive examples of government agencies working together in partnership, not only with each other, but with industry stakeholders to achieve some positive things, and that hopefully there'll be scope for more of that, particularly in light of what's going on in the U.S.
Monique, would you like to add something? And we're going to be short of time, so let's keep our comments brief.
Really quickly, just to say that in the meantime, it's our teams, my team, Tom's team, we all work very, very closely together. So when we renewed our programs, we worked with Agriculture, ISED, ECC, Environment Canada, Global Affairs. Same thing with the work that Tom is doing now that he mentioned earlier. So, to be honest, those initiatives that might come out from one department, like the clean fuel regulations, are built on whole of government consultations.
I have two questions here from the audience. One you think that I had set up, but I actually promise I didn't. But it's about the USDA Biopreferred program, which of course I've always been a big fan of. I don't know, Tom, if you've had a chance to look at it lately, but it now has 16,000 items that are independently certified as minimum 30% biomass based. And as you know, the Biopreferred program requires U.S. federal government procurement, which includes the U.S. military. So it creates an enormous market pull. And so the question here is, how about some kind of cross-border or harmonization, or is there some way that we can collaborate and have something similar to the USDA Biopreferred program? Because as it stands now, Canadian companies, you don't have to be an American company to qualify for U.S. Biopreferred. There are Canadian companies who've got USDA certification, so we don't want different standards, but is there something that we can do in Canada to create similar market pull?
Jeff, you've got your question. I actually don't have a great answer to your question, which on the positive side means I'll be brief. We do work collaboratively on a number of, on science. Certainly compare notes regularly with the U.S. and what they're doing on climate and bioeconomy. In terms of their Biopreferred program, sounds like a really neat idea. It wasn't something that was on our radar screen, but we can definitely follow up with them and see what lessons we can learn for our procurement here.
Well, I know, Lynn, you're interested in the Biopreferred program because I did some work with you on that. And is there something there that on the standard side that you can comment on that would, because you mentioned that a lack of standards can be harming or delaying the implementation of the bioeconomy. So maybe you have a comment to make there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the whole idea of the Biopreferred program has come up in a lot of discussions. And one of the things that comes up is, would it work in Canada, and sort of, taking a look at what that would mean, what basically the Biopreferred is something that they follow a standard. It's an ASTM standard that measures the amount of bio-based content, but it doesn't speak to the sustainability of the source, et cetera, traceability and that sort of thing. So one of the areas that we're exploring is, what could that look like in Canada? We don't like to duplicate things, and we don't duplicate things, but taking a look at that and seeing sort of what that could look like to benefit Canada, that's definitely something that CSA is interested in exploring.
So a very quick, because we've run out of time, but there is another question here addressed to Tom, but I think, Monique, it also could apply to some of NRCan's initiative, and that is, with respect to you, Tom, does the Clusters program do research that could be made available then to groups of farmers? And I think the same thing could be, you could talk, Monique, about the research that's done, for example, in some of the labs.
Short answer is yeah. In fact, in a lot of cases, the clustered program, you'll have many agricultural commodities will have their own checkoff system. And effectively, you'll sort of cost share what is often farmer-directed research programs on variety development and other things.
Yeah, just to say that some of the research that Forest Products Innovation Organization does is available to the public. A lot of it is. And most of what we fund is going to be available to the public. So it's available to new entrants as well as people who are already active in either the forest sector or the bioeconomy.
Well, listen, I know we've run out of time. I just want to mention that yesterday, Charles Vincent's closing comment to me after he heard his panel and felt that he'd learned quite a lot is that the bioeconomy needs to be part of Canada's industrial strategy. So when you're meeting with Charles, you can remind him of that. And also, I want to ask all of you, I mean, you know, these three people, in terms of standards and what does industry need and what is going to help you guys and what is going to hinder, because we don't want standards that then are going to hinder commercialization, and working together with Lynn and Tom and Monique to help them get their job done. So please thank them for being here and collaborate with them to get this moving forward.